Hello, it's Lexi at Cozy Tea Cafe over on Bookstagram, and today I'm going to be summarizing A Forbidden Alchemy by Stacey McEwan, Book 1 in the Artisan Trilogy, with Book 2 coming out on July 21st. If you're not familiar with these videos, they will be full of spoilers, so if you have not read Book 1 and you don't want it spoiled, don't continue watching. So to start, we have Nina Harrow, our main character, who was born on the continent of Belvedere Trench during a mining collapse, and her father was the only miner to make it out alive. Since then, her mother has left, and her father has turned to whiskey and a drug called bluff. Their continent has two kinds of people: the lower class craftsmen who do the dirty jobs, and the high society artisans who wield magic. Every citizen is taken to Belvedere City at 12 years old to determine if they were born with magic. Artisan scribblers are the source of all correspondence in Belvedere and can send a message with their mind. 12-year-old Nina receives a letter in her family's scribbler cranny that it's time for her to attend the siphoning ceremony. Nina leaves Scurry by train and has no plans of returning, regardless of if she's an artisan or not. Patrick Coulson boards the train from Kenton Hill, and he comes from a family of craftsmen and plans to go home as soon as possible. When they arrive in the city, Lord Tanner, the head of the House of Lords, greets all of the children on the train and reminds them that the Almighty sent his human daughter Idia to walk their lands long ago. She led armies, and when her blood fell on the land, it crystallized within terranium ore, which is still mined thousands of years later. The crystallized blood is then extracted and turned into idiom, which allows those with artisan gifts to perform magic. Patrick introduces himself to Nina, and they get off on the wrong foot at first and argue back and forth. Then they form somewhat of a bond. Patrick learns that Nina has always wanted to be an artisan, specifically an alchemist, one of the rarest artisan jobs, who extract the idiom from terranium. Artisans are creative by nature, and each artisan has a medium. A scribbler's medium is ink. Cutters specialize in stones like diamond and quartz. Smiths mold copper, iron, or other metals. Smiths are a higher order and work with wood and stone. And alchemy and elemental charmers are the most important. While they wait to be called, Patrick takes Nina off the train to find food. They sneak into the National Artisan House against Nina's better judgment, and they see kids performing the siphoning ceremony by placing their hands over different mediums after drinking the idiom. If nothing happens, they're deemed a craftsman, and if a medium reacts, they're an artisan. Patrick and Nina find an open cellar door and see tons of idiom crates inside. They hide and overhear a woman saying they've got all the artisan children they need for this year, and to give the rest of the kids from Brinktowns the crafter-marked vials. A man suggests that some of the poor kids could be given a better life if the vials were swapped, but she tells him speaking like that could get him executed. When the workers leave, Patrick and Nina look inside the crates and see that some of the vials are marked with wax seals, indicating they're for the artisans they've pre-selected. Nina looks devastated and says that she never had a chance, but Patrick grabs 2 vials of each before they leave. They get back to the train, and when Kenton Hill is called, Patrick kisses Nina on the cheek and hands her one of each vial so she can choose her own future. When Nina is called, she removes the wax from the artisan vial and hands it to the official. She drinks the vial, and dust and dirt starts to swirl around her, marking her as an earth charmer. Frances Liesel, the woman Nina overheard in the cellar, takes her away and tells her that her new name is going to be Nina Clark. Frances says that if anyone asks, she's Frances's niece and was born in Summerland to Frederick Clark and Frances's sister Greta Liesel. Her new story is that her mother was an artisan and her father was a craftsman, but both are dead now. Frances tells Nina that she can never tell anyone the truth, and she will be Frances's ward. Next, Nina is branded with the artisan emblem depicting Idia, and she begins orientation and classes at the Artisan Academy, while back in Kenton Hill, rumors of fixed siphoning ceremonies start to spread. Of the 266 new artisan students, there is only 1 earth charmer, Nina, and 1 water charmer, Theodore Schaap. Lord Tanner sends a letter to Nina congratulating her on becoming an earth charmer and says he knew her parents well. At the end of the letter, he makes an ominous remark about a child of false breeding belonging in Scurry, which shows that he knows the truth. Nina makes friends with a scribbler from Lavenshire named Polly Prescott, since they are the only two students from Brink towns. In class, she learns that bluff is another byproduct of terranium, which is used medicinally for healing and also as a recreational drug in higher doses. At Tanner's request, Headmaster Dumley starts privately tutoring Nina and Theodore, since they are the only two charmers. Theo is able to levitate some tea out of a pot, while Nina is able to levitate fresh soil, shape it into various objects, float it into constellations before it falls all over the room, which shows that she's very talented. Theo invites Nina to sit with him at lunch because he noticed that she's been sitting alone. Now in her second year, Nina sees a newspaper reporting that many craftsmen are planning a strike after mine collapses in Kenton Hill and continued rumors of fixed siphoning ceremonies. Nina heads to her fake Aunt Frances's house, and they've grown to care for each other over the years. Frances tells her to be careful around Theo because his father is next in line for the House of Lords, and Nina has a lot to lose. Nina still feels like a fraud and asks why some get idiom and others don't. Frances believes that a long time ago everyone was allowed to consume idiom, but it went badly and led to a war that was removed from history. They choose children of artisans to get the real idiom so they can pass it off as genetics. If the number of artisan children is low one year, more crafter children will become artisans. And they usually choose the children of crafters who serve the house well. In their third year, another alchemist dies, and the miners' union has held a successful strike, leading to a terranium shortage. Lord Tanner stops in on one of Nina and Theo's lessons and says if the union keeps striking, he'll need to be proactive and use the artisans at his disposal. In their fourth year, Theo and Nina are both offered fellowships in the House of Lords cabinet, and both of them are reluctant to take the positions, but Theo thinks if they did it together, they could change things in Bellavere, and then he kisses her, sparking their relationship. 2 years later, they're about to graduate when they receive scribblers from the miners' union telling them to depart immediately because attack is imminent. Another alchemist dies from the flu, and the last known alchemist goes into hiding as the next siphoning ceremony is postponed due to the idiom shortage. Theo finds Nina before the graduation ceremony to say goodbye, and we learn that a few weeks prior, Theo broke up with Nina after learning that he wasn't going to the House of Lords anymore. His father is sending him to Thornton to study with water charmers for fear of the war, and he'll be there for 2 years, and he doesn't want Nina to wait around for him. But he says that he'll look for her when he comes back. As Nina crosses the stage, the floor rumbles as the miners' union attacks. Frances guides Nina out as the walls and ceiling come crashing down, then she pushes Nina through the exit and is crushed by falling rubble. Theo finds Nina trapped and helps her out, then tells her Frances is dead. He suggests going to the House of Lords because his father will know what to do, but Nina says they should run because they'll be used as weapons. Theo says they need to fight back against the rebels, and Nina knows that they'll be on opposite sides of this argument, so she sends him off to find Frances's body, then she flees. 7 years later, the last alchemist has been seized by rebels, and the leader of the miners' union is in Lord Tanner's custody. Nina bounces between Brink towns and works as a crafter to remain hidden, but then she's kidnapped by 2 men named Scotty and Otto and wakes up being carried through an underground tunnel. The men bring her to their leader, and she sees it's Patrick, the boy from the train 13 years ago. He offers her a partnership and says if she builds tunnels for him, he'll find her safe passage off the continent. She knows that sooner or later Lord Tanner will find her, and she's sick of hiding, so she agrees as long as she doesn't have to kill anyone. Patrick reveals that he's known she was the Earth Charmer since the day of their siphoning ceremony, and Nina accuses him of starting a war by spreading the rumors, but he says they started it together when they broke into that cellar and discovered the truth. Nina learns that Patrick's dad was the chairman of the miners' union, but Patrick and his 2 brothers have been filling in since he was detained 2 years ago. Kenton Hill has held out their strike all these years, and they've been able to remain self-sufficient with the extra supplies. They arrive at the Coulson family inn, and Patrick guides Nina upstairs and tells her that Sam will be guarding the door day and night, then gives her a bottle of idiom, which means he must have captured the alchemist. Nina is amazed at the technology Kenton Hill has managed to develop without assistance from Bellavere City. There's a tub with pipes for hot and cold water, and a lantern that can be turned on with the pull of a string. She knocks on the locked door and tells Sam she wants to go for a walk in town, but he says the boss's orders are not to let her pass. Nina uses her magic to make the dust rise and threatens to bring the whole building down, so he agrees to walk with her. We learn that Patrick's father, John, inherited the Coulson family inn, but it was in shambles, so John had to work the mines to earn the money to fix it up. When the inn opened, it still wasn't bringing in enough money, so John and his sons had to continue working in the mines, while Patrick's mother, Tess, ran the inn. Patrick goes home and sees his older brother, Gunnar, drunk at the table, and tells Gunnar that he spoke to his wife and she'll take him back if he stops the bluff and whiskey. Gunnar promises that he won't mess up again, then Sam finds Patrick and tells him that Nina tricked him into going on a walk, then disappeared. Nina is at Idia's canals, admiring the trenches made by earth charmers, and Patrick finds her and explains that the canals are kept clear by experts, but they aren't able to farm anything here because the land is bad. They trade coal and safe passage through the tunnels in exchange for food with union members from other towns. They argue, and Nina says the union is just as bad as the House of Lords, and Patrick is convinced she'll join their cause sooner or later. He takes her to a part of town called the Coal Works, where they use coal to light and heat the town, and says it was his brother's invention. He brings her to a market, and she sees that everything is free because the townspeople do their fair share in exchange for food, electricity, and heat, but businesses still operate on a trading system. Patrick takes Nina to a tea house, and he's accosted by Sam's mom, who screams at him for letting Sam join the union because she doesn't want him killed like his father, but Patrick says that he did not force him to join. Otto runs in and says hawkers are at the market, who are people that trade bad bluff, often cut with opium or arsenic. They all leave and see known dealer Ferris at the market, and Patrick had set Ferris up with a new job in the stables so he could stop dealing, and Patrick tries to reason with him, but after Ferris insults his family, he beats him up until Nina tells him to stop. Then Patrick warns him that he'll be shot next time. After the town meeting, Bellavere police show up, and Patrick's mom, Tess, hides Nina away and tells her that the union pays the police to report back to Bellavere that they're still under police control. They overhear the police say that Ferris came to their door, claiming that Patrick has the earth charmer Nina Clark, and they say the lords are offering way more for her reward than what they're being paid. Patrick says Ferris was mistaken, and the police see they're outnumbered and leave. The Coulson brothers find Ferris at the stables, while Scotty and Briggs round up some of his old colleagues, and Patrick lets one of Ferris's men, named Leon, flip a coin to choose who will shoot Ferris, and Leon chooses Donnie, Patrick's blind younger brother. As Ferris runs, Donnie shoots straight and kills him. Then Patrick tells the rest of the men this is a warning to stay on the right path. Nina goes upstairs and is shocked to see Theo coming out of the room next to hers. He tells Nina that he looked for her for a long time, and she says it was too risky to contact him because of his loyalty to the House of Lords. He's been mining and purifying the canals in Kenton Hill for the past 2 years after he was ousted from the house for treason for warning Brink towns of upcoming raids. The next morning, Nina and Theo meet with Polly Prescott, Nina's old school friend who has been Kenton Hill's scribbler for the past 3 years. The three of them meet with the Coulsons and their men to discuss Patrick's plan to dig a tunnel to Bellavere City and get back the men that were captured 2 years ago. Scotty and Otto are the navigators, Briggs is the clay kicker, and Gunnar and Patrick are the laborers that move the dirt to the surface. Donnie is the listening post, and Tess is the lookout while they're in the hole. Nina will use her abilities to expand the hole, and Theo will make sure the tunnel doesn't flood as they go under the Geyser River. Theo asks if he plans on blowing up the house, but Patrick says he wouldn't risk blowing up their men in the process. Polly received a notice a few months ago stating that Union fugitives were still in custody and offered to release them if the Union released the last alchemist, but Patrick says it's not up for discussion. In the tunnel, Patrick asks Nina what she and Theo are to each other, and she says they were in love during school but haven't seen each other since. Nina starts using her magic to extend the tunnel, and they're amazed at how much power she has. Patrick sends word up to his mother that they should be to Bellavere City within 4 weeks at this rate, then praises Nina but tells her that they need to move slowly to avoid weak spots in the earth and to allow for the displaced dirt to be brought up through the hole. When they're done, Patrick invites Nina to a Union rally, and Nina feels an attraction to him. In a flashback, Polly tells Nina that the artisans have been lying to them and war is imminent, so Nina brings her outside to avoid others hearing. Theo finds them outside, and when Nina asks what will happen if a war breaks out, he tells her not to be naive because their skills are needed for war. This is also when he tells her that he's going to Thornton and breaks up with her. In the present, Theo escorts Nina to the rally, and when they dance together, Nina realizes she doesn't think of him the same way she used to. Then Patrick interrupts them to dance with Nina. She accuses him of being jealous, and he doesn't deny it, and she again feels this attraction to him. She admits that she used to draw pictures of him in school so she wouldn't forget him, and he tells her she's too beautiful to be real and kisses her. They walk outside together, and Nina asks how the miners' union started. Patrick's dad had always met with other craftsmen in secret, but when Patrick told him about what they found, things escalated and the craftsmen attacked the police station. The rest of the police were scared, so they didn't report what happened to Belvidere City. The union expanded to other towns, using the tunnels to communicate and trade. Patrick's dad came up with the idea of attacking the school, and Patrick begged him not to, but they sent plenty of warnings, hoping the lords would evacuate the school. Patrick and his men dug a tunnel from the outskirts of the city to beneath the school, and Patrick detonated the explosives, but he apologizes and swears he didn't know the students were above. He walks her back and they kiss again, but when Nina gets into her room, she sees Theo waiting for her drunk. He saw her kiss Patrick and asks what will happen when he finds out that Tanner sent her here to bury him. Now we jump back 1 month prior and see that infantrymen captured Nina and brought her to Tanner, who told her that she can either fight on their side or die. He brought her mom in and reveals that he tracked her down while Nina was still in school and found her working at the National Artisan House, hoping to gain opportunities for Nina, not knowing she was already a student there. He fired her mom so she wouldn't contact Nina and shipped her off to a brink town where she slowly declined, presumably because of bluff. Tanner tells Nina that she'll have to go to the miners' union headquarters and gain their trust before betraying them, or else he'll kill her and her mom. Patrick meets with his family, and Gunnar confronts him for kissing Nina when their rule is no sleeping with the artisans. Patrick sees he's drunk and high and tells Donnie to take him home. Tess says she hasn't seen Patrick smile like he did earlier in a long time and tells him not to get his hopes up because Nina will leave, even though he's holding out hope that she'll stay. Nina tells Theo that she's seducing Patrick for the mission and says he hasn't found the alchemist in 2 years because Patrick will only reveal his location to someone he loves and trusts. She confirms her orders from Tanner are to find the alchemist, Demelius Becker, then bury Kenton Hill. Nina tells Theo about her mother, but learns that Theo came here willingly because of his loyalty to the house, and his exile was just a ruse. Tanner knew that Theo spent years looking for Nina and promised that he'd find her and keep her safe as a thank you for volunteering in Kenton Hill. But now he's upset that he has to see her with another man after just finding her again. He says he won't interfere with her plans and reveals Polly is also a spy. Back in the tunnels, there's a water leak, and Theo says he'll need 2 days to fix it. Nina accompanies Patrick on a meeting to Dorser after beating him in a race, and as they're walking through the tunnels, Nina confronts Polly about being sent by Tanner, but learns she didn't come willingly, and Nina suspects she's in love with Otto. 3 hours later, they reach their destination and find a man named Lionel who gives them a sack with some guns and grenades. Patrick confronts Lionel about the empty shipping containers and asks where the rest of the weapons are, and Lionel says the cops came early and confiscated everything. Patrick questions how he was able to get the sack of weapons out and accuses Lionel of skimming weapons off each shipment. Patrick says Lionel can keep the medicinal bluff he's given him, but he won't be receiving further shipment. Lionel threatens him and things escalate, leading to Patrick and Lionel shooting at each other, but Lionel misses and he's killed by Patrick's bullet. Later at the pub, Polly tells Nina that Tanner gathered up all of the scribblers before they graduated and told them they would be stationed in brink towns to prepare for the incoming war. He promised anyone who provided information would be rewarded and moved closer to Belvidere City. Polly was first stationed in Hessen, one of the worst brink towns, and she traded information for years in hopes of getting back to Belvidere City, but each time they moved her post, it was just to locations she'd heard information about, not any closer to the city. She eventually heard the name Pat come up while she was stationed in Dorser, and Patrick ended up saving her from an attempted sexual assault and brought her back to Kenton Hill. Polly still didn't trust them, so she told Tanner that she found where the miners' union was stationed, and she's been spying ever since. Polly says she cares for the town and people, but she's stuck between two guns now because both sides will kill her for betraying them. Nina joins the Coulson brothers at their table, and Gunnar clearly still doesn't like her, but she cracks a crude joke, and when Gunnar learns that she's a miner's daughter from Scurry, he starts to soften towards her. Polly and Otto join the table, and they're all laughing and drinking when Theo comes in muddy and angry after a day spent in the tunnels. Nina talks with him privately, and he says she needs to find the information soon because he can't keep faking leaks. After their interaction, Patrick asks Nina if she's okay and says that Theo hasn't lost his temper in 2 years of being here and guesses that Theo is still in love with her. He also finds it suspicious that the two of them found each other after so many years in Kenton Hill of all places. Nina wakes up and sees that Patrick slept in the chair next to her bed after carrying her home drunk the night before. Nina asks him when he was going to tell her that he was an artisan and guesses that he's a lead or steelsmith. He says only his family and men know and assumes Theo and Polly have guessed by now. Patrick mentions his promise to help Nina escape the continent, but asks if there's any chance she would stay if he proved he could protect her. Nina tells Patrick about her mother leaving as a kid, then being taken prisoner by the house as punishment for Nina turning artisan, and she says Patrick could get both of their parents back if he traded the alchemist for them. Patrick says there's another way and promises to rescue her mom during their mission. Nina says if her mom is rescued, then she would stay there with him, and then they kiss. From Nina's perspective, we learn that she is telling the truth, and she plans to stay with Patrick once her mother is safe. She knows Polly doesn't want to hurt the Coulsons, but she's worried about Theo because he'll never betray the artisans. Nina hears the sirens wailing outside, signaling that a tunnel has collapsed. The east mine has collapsed, causing a landslide, so Nina runs towards it and uses her charmer magic to stop the landslide from reaching the town. Nina runs for the pit to help the men trapped in the mine, and Patrick tells her it's not safe because of the gas leaks, but the rest of the men say they need an earth charmer to get the miners out. Patrick says there are 25 men down there, including Gunnar, then tells her to make it back out because he's fallen in love with her. Nina makes it down the shaft and finds the men, but feels dizzy from the gas. On their way out, the canary drops dead, signaling an incoming gas explosion, and Nina holds the walls up with her magic as the men pass through, then runs to the exit as the walls fall behind her and she passes out. Nina wakes up and learns that all of the men made it out alive, and she saved hundreds from the landslide. Gunnar carries her back to the inn, and Theo demands to help her to her room, but Gunnar argues with him until Tess interrupts and sends them away. Tess helps Nina wash up and tells her that she's always envied the artisans and says if she were in Nina's position, she would have also taken the idiom. Tess reveals that on Gunnar's first day in the mines, he nearly died in a collapse and hasn't been the same since. She thanks Nina for saving her son and tells her if she plans on breaking Patrick's heart, to do it sooner rather than later, but Nina assures her that she doesn't plan to. Patrick and Nina finally sleep together and spend the whole next day in her room until Donnie tells Pat that the whole town is waiting downstairs. Nina and Patrick come down to see the whole town cheering and thanking Nina for saving their men, and they tell her she's one of them now. Patrick thanks Nina in front of the crowd, then kisses her. Nina goes outside with Theo and Polly, and Theo presses her on the alchemist's location, and Nina snaps back at him and tells him that he came here voluntarily and he isn't being threatened with execution, which makes him momentarily back down. Polly interrupts and says there's been news from the House of Lords stating that their time is up and they need to flee because they will be attacking soon. Nina begs for more time to find the alchemist and says the house won't come if they can't find a way in, but Polly reminds Nina that she created a tunnel right to the center of Kenton Hill. Theo agrees to hold the house off for no more than 1 week, and when he leaves, Nina tells Polly that she knows she loves Otto and they will all die if the house attacks, so Polly agrees to hold them off for as long as she can, but she doesn't want to die. The next day, Nina presses Patrick on the alchemist, and she learns that Becker is not being kept in town, and he tells her that she's the only woman he's ever loved, while Theo is just ahead and overhears everything. That night, Patrick invites Nina to the first Frost Festival, and when they get there, Theo is drunk and picks a fight with the Coulson brothers. Nina follows Theo outside after he storms off, and he asks if she loves Patrick. When she hesitates, he warns her that Patrick will kill her when he finds out about her betrayal. Later that night, Nina sneaks out of bed and goes to the kitchen that's off limits and sees crates of pure medicinal bluff, and Patrick finds her there and tells her that this is what they actually trade for food and other supplies. Nina tells Polly that she found Bluff headed for Dunwich, and Polly tells her that she received another message from the house stating that attack is imminent. Nina tells her to inform the house that they have a lead on the alchemist, to buy them a couple of days, and Polly will forge a scribbler saying that there's trouble with the alchemist to see what Patrick does. Nina finds Theo at the trolley, and he says he can't stay here any longer and apologizes for the things he said about her the night before. But Nina tells him that they found the alchemist and can barter him for her mother because these people don't deserve to die and Tanner should be stopped. Theo says that even after they find Becker, they'll send fire charmers to destroy Dunwich and they can't avoid bloodshed, then asks her for one last favor to encourage the Coulsons not to come looking for him when he flees. He'll take a tunnel northeast and find a boat and promises not to alert the house that she's abandoned her duty because he doesn't want her or her mother killed. Sam gives Patrick a note from Theo that says, "It isn't you she wants, it's the alchemist, long live Bellavere." Patrick sends Scotty and Otto after Theo, but he doesn't believe the note at first until he receives a scribbler saying there's trouble with the alchemist, and he starts to doubt Nina and reflects on the amount of questions she's asked about the alchemist. Nina received a note from Polly telling her to meet at the Eastern Tunnel in 1 hour, and Nina debates telling Patrick everything, but she's still worried about his reaction. She enters the tunnels and finds Patrick waiting for her, and he says he'll give her one more chance to tell the truth. Nina admits that she's been looking for the alchemist to barter his whereabouts in exchange for her mother and his father. Patrick says that Becker cannot be traded because he killed him 2 years ago, otherwise he would have traded him in a heartbeat. Patrick promises Nina that he'll save their parents and makes her promise she won't go behind his back again. Nina doesn't understand how the last alchemist could be dead because of the crates of bluff and idiom Patrick has, until she realizes that Patrick is an alchemist. Patrick says he learned mostly by trial and error, but focuses on bluff because the Brink towns need the medicine. Patrick says that his father's plan was to find and kill Becker, then send a message to the house letting them know Patrick was the last remaining alchemist and list their demands, but something went wrong and his father was captured right after Patrick killed Becker. The newspapers never revealed John or Patrick Coulson by name, so he knows his father didn't reveal his abilities, and he's kept quiet about Becker's death in order to keep Kenton Hill safe. Nina apologizes and says that she won't betray his trust again, but she doesn't tell him that she was sent by Tanner yet because she wants to warn Polly first, and Patrick promises to marry her after he rescues her mom. Nina finds Polly and tells her that the alchemist is dead and warns her that she'll be telling Patrick everything when he gets back from a delivery. Polly warns that he'll kill her, but Nina assures her that he won't hurt either of them. Nina gives her a chance to run, but it seems like she'll stay. Donnie, Tess, and Gunnar confront Nina about learning all of the family secrets and say they have more to tell her. Donnie shoots his gun at the wall, and she sees the bullet move all across the room, revealing that he's a silversmith, which is why he shoots so well, even though he's blind. And Gunnar is a coppersmith, which allowed him to invent the coalworks system. Patrick meets an associate in the tunnels and learns that there was a raid in a neighboring town and fire charmers killed at least 1,000 people. Polly sends a message to Tanner telling him that the alchemist is dead and sends him coordinates to the underground tunnel and urges him to come peacefully. Nina hears rumbling and runs outside to see Gunnar shouting for everyone to get into the tunnel bunkers because the Lord's army is here. Gunnar asks Nina if she did this and she says no, but he knocks her out and puts her in the bunker. Patrick exits the tunnel to see chaos and assumes Theo sold them out to the Lord's army. Theo shows up and assures Patrick he couldn't have sold them out without a scribbler, and says he came back because he regretted the letter and wanted to make sure Patrick didn't hurt Nina. They run to the coal works so Theo can take out the fire charmers before they blow up the whole town, but Patrick is shot in the shoulder by a group of soldiers. Theo tells them not to shoot because he's an artisan and a fire charmer recognizes him, and tells the others that he was sent by Tanner with the earth charmer, and reveals that Polly sent word that Becker was dead. They're looking for Patrick Coulson, the last alchemist, and Theo points to him on the ground. Before they grab Patrick, Theo sends a wall of water up from the canals and sweeps the army soldiers away, killing most of them. Theo tells them that they need to find Nina, but Patrick demands to know if Tanner sent her, and Theo confirms but says that she wanted to stay for him. Nina wakes up in the bunker and 2 soldiers lift the lid and take her away. Then Theo's wall of water crashes down and sweeps her and the soldiers away. She gets up and sees Patrick put a gun to his head and announce that he's the last alchemist alive, and offers to go with them willingly if the soldiers stand down and leave the town. Both sides command their men to stand down, and Nina runs for Patrick, but he coldly tells her to run and says Theo will find her. Nina announces to the soldiers that she's the earth charmer, and the general, who is a smith, uses his power to pull Patrick's gun away and says he'll be taking them both. The soldiers come out with Theo in custody and escort all 3 of them down into the tunnels, and Patrick tells Nina to bury them all if she ever loved him. So that is where book 1 ends. Again, book 2 comes out July 21st. And if you have any other recommendations for books you'd like me to summarize, just leave a comment.